Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Yeah, it's kind of that brings to We're not here tonight to have a discussion, are we, Steve? Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is the one, the only, the one who howls at the moon, Mr. Axabovs.
It's only 9 letters, man. You're gonna run out.
I don't know, like, what is it like? You take each individual letter, or each individual number in a thing, multiply it by itself, and then multiply it by the total numbers again, and you get, like, all the possible
Every possible combination?
Yeah. So that'd be 9 times 9, which is 81.
81.
And then, so 81 times 9, right? Like, isn't that how that works mathematically? I think I've got quite a few.
But how many can your mouth actually say?
I don't know, like, that's the thing, is I need, like, a word jumbler so I can create a list of them. And then the other thing is, if I repeat one, are you really going to be able to call me on it?
It's true. I'm not even going to notice at this point.
Yeah. But anyway, Steve, what are we here to discuss tonight? Because I don't think it's mathematics and the permutations of your name.
No, probably not. But that sounds like a cool video anyway.
That is equally horrifying, though, here on Geeky Gentleman Horror Month.
It's
math!
Our entire October theme is math. That's what we do. But today we are talking about Larry Talbot, the Wolfman.
Yay, the Wolfman.
I love the Wolfman. The Wolfman, I think, is probably my favorite of those Universal monster movies.
You know, it puts me in an interesting place, because I actually don't have a ton of love for the Universal monster movies.
That's fair.
I think they're, like, important, and I've watched them, and they're, like, charming, but I don't have a ton of love for them beyond that. And while werewolves are my favorite of that, like, universal horror monster kind of thing, I don't find the Wolfman particularly interesting. Like, just as a character, and the mythos in which they introduce in those films in particular always kind of bugs me. So, like, I don't know, I have this weird thing where I respect the Wolfman a lot more than I care about the Wolfman.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
What are your thoughts?
Like, the Wolfman, werewolves by extension, but I think the Wolfman in particular is kind of interesting because you've got Dracula, which is based on one of the most important works of Gothic literature of all time. You've got Frankenstein, which is based on one of the most important Gothic works of literature of all time. And you got Creature from the Black Lagoon, which has got the same sort of, like, history in old Gothic literature. Wolfman, not really. Wolfman and werewolves just kind of, like, show up, and they're campy. And, like, the Wolfman is film's contribution to Gothic horror in a way that stuff like the Dracula movies not necessarily aren't. And I always thought that was kind of interesting. It's like the Wolfman's always kind of like the underdog in horror movie creatures, in the same way that, like, in Power Rangers, this is the one time we created a Ranger that was America exclusive and no one gave a shit. But that's kind of why everyone liked him, because he was ours. I like that idea of it. And then also just something about werewolves as a concept, I think, are really, really interesting, where, like, the arc for the character there can always be done in, like, it can be done either as, like, there's an animal and then there's a person, or it can be done almost like Hulk style, where, like, they are two distinctly different people. And the Wolfman movie never really played with the two distinctly different people thing, but I feel like the Wolfman's a really cool distillation of, like, let's do the animalistic thing almost like Dracula style of like prying on your urges, or like let's do the Jekyll and Hyde thing of like these are two separate people, or let's even do the Frankenstein thing and be like, what kind of freak of nature and science are you? Like the Wolfman's like this just really cool mix of ideas.
Amalgamation. Yeah. And that's my thing, is like I really like the concept of werewolves. I've always liked werewolves the most since I was a kid, as far as that wheelhouse of monsters. And just, man, they're so damn cool. Like it is the closest to a superpower out of all the Universal monster
That's
stuff,
fair.
I think. And you mentioned the Hulk thing, and that's definitely it. Like Teen Wolf. Teen Wolf is not like a great show, but it's got its moments of like coolness, and it does, the werewolves are like a Hulk thing, except they lose control almost completely during a full moon. I like that. That was just a neat way to play with the mythos and stuff. Ginger Snaps also does some interesting stuff too, but like there's just a real cool appeal to werewolves for me that I've always been into. Whereas watching the Wolfman, like I remember when I was a kid and Turner Classic Movies was doing marathons of all the classic Universal movies, and I was asking my dad, when are they going to play the Wolfman? When are they going to play the Wolfman? And he told me that he'd get me up for it, and he did. And I remember watching it and being so disappointed in that movie. I was like, oh, this isn't like the werewolves I watch on TV and other stuff at all.
I'll give you that it's kind of a slow burn, at least the initial movie is. The Wolfman has the least solo movies, doesn't he? Because it's just the Wolfman, and then he doesn't show back up again until he's with Frankenstein and Dracula.
Yeah, pretty much.
We basically just did one Wolfman movie until the remake, didn't we?
Yeah, as far as like official Universal Wolfman, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess no one else really loved the Wolfman, but like, and again, this is more extrapolating with werewolf stuff, but like, to talk about the Wolfman particularly, like Lawrence Talbot as a character, he's really bland, and there's no other way to put it. He's extremely bland. The only thing interesting about him is when he gets turned into a werewolf. And like everything that happens to him that's interesting at all is by extension of the werewolfness of it. But I don't know. I always found it kind of interesting that like, let's take that nameless, annoying gothic archetype that gets the ball rolling in almost all of these stories, like Frankenstein and Dracula and Jekyll and Hyde, and turn them into a monster. So like, Larry Talbot isn't in any way an interesting or important character. He's basically the real estate dude that goes to Dracula's castle at the beginning of the story. Except now he's a werewolf. I don't know. There's something about like that sort of bland character that suddenly becomes cosmically important that's sort of interesting. And then the story does an interesting way of like playing on that. The Wolfman is by no means a brilliant movie, but like it's charming, and I feel like it's very it knows its beginning, middle, and end. It knows kind of its own structure and where it wants to go, and like so there is this sort of like there's a whole like gypsy curse kind of thing behind the Wolfman, and like it's very goal oriented in a way none of the other horror movies are. Yeah,
and like I think it does the most with just like kind of that inevitable like pendulum swinging kind of horror to it, where you open the movie with the gypsy werewolf telling the woman to run away because he can see the moon in her hand, so he knows he's about to kill her. And like that's really interesting, and how that comes back later on in the movie. Refresh my memory. Who kills the Wolfman at the end of the first movie? Is it his father?
I think his dad. Yeah. He shoots him with the silver bullet, and then
no, it's a club. It's a club. I remember it specifically. It's a silver-headed club.
Oh, it's a club. Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, silver bullet's a retcon later, isn't it?
Yeah. But like I really remember like that imagery, and like the town was hunting for the monster, and then they find, the dude's body, and they go, oh, he must have died fighting the thing. That's like there's something really somber about that. There's some like the father kills the son, or it's either his father or his friend. I remember
it's his
that
dad.
much.
It's his dad.
Okay. Yeah, the father kills the son, and yet his legacy as a human is saved and all this stuff. He gets to die a hero kind of thing. This is The Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan plagiarized the Wolfman when he made The Dark Knight. No, but like, I really like that somberness, that like tone, and I like the inevitable, like, I'm going to kill the woman I love kind of thing when he sees the full moon in the palm of her hand or whatever. Like, that's a really interesting and foreboding overhanging thing that he just has to deal with for the whole movie. And he's just like, I like the discovery of the fact that he's a werewolf. I like the way that he's trying to hide it and deal with it, but it's just like, it's hopeless. Like, at no point in that movie, and it's been years since I've seen it, so forgive me, but like, at no point in that movie is he close to finding a cure or a way out of it or anything. It is just a contain the beast, hopeless situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a straight up curse. The whole idea of like try to tame the werewolf kind of thing doesn't happen until much later with horror stuff. But like with the Wolfman in particular, there's never even a moment of like, let's entertain the thought of what happens if you gain control. Nope, it's a curse. You either get rid of it or you die.
Yep.
And a lot of like, and it's weird. It's bad to compare them in this way as the reverse, just because like the Hulk comes after the Wolfman, but for our purposes and considering how far removed we are and how old those characters are as opposed to that we are, the Wolfman and the Incredible Hulk TV show run together really well, where like the Hulk is a curse in the same way. And I always like that sort of notion of like, there is this character that's constantly migrating, knowing that he can't get attached to anything, and the moment he does, there's the formula of the curse coming back and killing everyone around him. I think that's cool. I love the way the Wolfman in particular, or just, and this is going to be more of an acting thing, but I love the way like Lon Chaney Jr. interacts with the rest of the monsters in all of those movies. It's just, he's so much fun. And the Wolfman makeup is not great, but it's, again, just so charming in that situation. None of the Universal Monster movies are scary, but they're charming and they get their point across very directly, and I've always respected that.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I was talking about with the outline and the curse nature of the first movie, there's definitely something about that that's horrific, but we're at the beginning of horror on film, stuff like that. So it's you know, it took time to develop these tools properly, but the groundwork was definitely there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a distinction between a monster movie and a horror movie, I think, and these were monster movies.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this. What'd you think of the Benicio del Toro remake from 2010?
I don't hate it. I really, really don't. I don't understand why everyone on the face of the earth is like, this is one of the worst things ever, and like, that's an abomination. It's not that bad.
It's not. It really isn't. It's also not very good.
Oh. No, it's not good at all. It's boring as fuck, but like, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro as Larry Talbot, or he's not even named Larry in that one, is he?
I don't think so. Isn't he like a French actor or something like that, or Spanish actor?
Yeah. They do a whole thing where like they have to explain away Benicio del Toro's accent and appearance, and so like he's from somewhere else. But like, it's Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins, Emily Blunt, Hugo Weaving. Like, that's a really good cast. I think visually it looks really good. I think the Wolfman design in that movie is really good, and I think the ending is really impactful. It's just too long and boring.
Yeah, my problem with it more is that I figured out Anthony Hopkins was the other werewolf, like, way too early.
Oh, it's so fucking obvious.
Yeah, so much sooner than they wanted you to. Like, and it's a real shame, because Anthony Hopkins revealing that, like, he's been the werewolf this whole time, if you didn't know that going into it, that was, like, he milks the shit out of that scene so well.
Oh, he loves it.
I know, he's like, I took the silver out of those bullets I took the gunpowder out of those bullets years ago. Let's unleash the beast. And he just fucking turns and starts fighting his son. Holy shit, that was awesome.
It's the coolest thing.
Like, he's like...
The wolf... Sorry, go ahead.
He is just so happy about getting to be evil. Like, he's it's this really neat metaphor for like that, repressed anger and rage and stuff. He's like, fuck it, I don't care anymore. I'm an old man. I want to murder children. I'm allowed this. And he is so deliciously evil in that scene. It's way too bad, that movie. I don't know, do you think you could make a fan edit of that movie and improve it?
Probably. I mean, the weird thing about it is, like I say, it's long and boring. It's not even 2 hours long. I feel like you could maybe cut it and streamline it more and do something in like a 90-minute cut, honestly. But that movie is like that perfect middle ground between something like Dracula Untold and Van Helsing, where like it's got the same amount of issues as something like that, as Dracula Untold, but it's so much fucking fun, just like Van Helsing.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's definitely got its moments.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested. I'm sure we could look up stuff and find a fan edit. I'm gonna look into.
Yeah, I think I have it on DVD, and my DVD says director's cut, so I imagine the theatrical cut might have been a substantial difference. Maybe not. I don't know. Mm-hmm. We tend to do a lot of horror director's cuts in general, though. But yeah, I like that movie. I mean, it's. The original Wolfman movie is really short and sweet, and I think it's very good and very effective, if nothing else. The 2010 movie suffers from trying to overcomplicate a very simple story for the sake of justifying a remake, and I don't think it needed to do that. Like, we've done...
I don't know, like, I enjoy some of the stuff it did.
No, I do too. I think it's just a matter of, like, the Wolfman's a very simple story, and the more you... regardless of how complicated and how deep you want to make it, the closer you stick to the very basic formula, the better off you're going to be.
See, I don't know if I'd agree with that, because I like some of the stuff that they threw in to add commentary and thought to it. Like, again, to get back to the nature of it's a curse, it's unavoidable. You have the men of science who you play around with this idea of, is Benicio del Toro's character actually a werewolf, or is he crazy? Because, they talk about this history of mental illness in his family, and they relate it all to the idea of lunatic, which is really, really neat, because the term supposedly comes from, people go crazy when there's a full moon. And so you have these men of science who are absolutely convinced that, no, he's not a fucking werewolf, that's so stupid, and here, we're gonna strap him to a chair, and we're all gonna watch you at the full moon to prove to you that you're crazy, but it won't matter, you'll find some excuse to justify your delusion anymore, but we'll do it just for fun. And they're sitting there laughing at him, making fun of him for thinking that he's turned into a werewolf. And then he fucking turns into a werewolf and kills everybody. That's a really, really good payoff for that. I think that really works. And again, it adds that level of, you have the men of science who are so logical, and then you have this curse that is like unavoidable, inescapable reality. And those two playing up against each other, I think, is really, really functioning well. I will say, it is played a lot better. It is a great idea that is played off a lot better than another great idea that is played off terribly in another Universal monster movie, I, Frankenstein.
Oh my god, I, Frankenstein.
That movie is so bad, but there is something really, really interesting in the idea of heaven and hell going to war over the Frankenstein monster because man has taken the ability to create life away from God. That is fucking fascinating. Making it...
I mean, the comics are really good.
Yeah, making it a war between gargoyles and angels and demons and all that was stupid. But, like, the notion of hell wanting the Frankenstein monster so it can create life and spit in the face of God, that's beautiful.
I agree. Yeah, no, I mean, and that makes sense, and a lot of what you mentioned there, again, borrowing themes from stuff like Frankenstein. Yeah, I don't know, there's something about, like, using the Wolfman's original story and, like, compartmentalizing all of those interesting themes into just this one very simple monster. I didn't grow up with the Wolfman movie so much as I watched a lot of Buffy and Oz turned into a werewolf, and that was, like, my big sort of, werewolves are cool and interesting, because Oz was, like, the most chill character you could have. Like, the episode where he found out angels and demons and vampires and werewolves were all true, someone told him literally all of these things are true, and he's like, that makes a lot of sense. And that was just his reaction. because he's been seeing it for 3 years, and it's hilarious. It's like having that guy turn into a werewolf, and then going back and watching the old stuff like, oh, here's another really bland, just chill guy, and he turns into a werewolf. I don't know. I like that. And I kind of like that the werewolf is not literary. The werewolf had to become literary over time. Mm-hmm. Particularly with that movie. Like, I feel like the remake sort of proves on a lot of levels that, like, we think the Wolfman can do a lot, we just haven't done a lot with it.
Huh. Okay, that's an interesting one. Because I feel like the werewolf stuff's always some of the more interesting things in horror.
But see, and that's my thing about it, right? Like, because if you talk to anyone about a Dracula, let's say we make another Dracula movie that's based on the book. And then it comes out and, like, it's a fine movie, but people are like, well, you know, the book did all this brilliant stuff, and then we do the same thing with Frankenstein, or we do the same thing with Jekyll and Hyde. The fact that the Wolfman didn't come from a book is something that I actually had... It takes me time to realize that, because the idea and our cultural reference for that idea is just as much on par with Dracula and Frankenstein, Jekyll and Hyde, and we don't remember the fact that it doesn't come from a book. So, like, it's the one time you can't say the book is better, because there is...
Yeah, I'll give you that.
I just feel like we could do so much with that, because it seems like the entire world thinks the werewolves are a brilliant idea. We just haven't given it that same sort of, like, here's the tour de force of werewolf literature, in the same way we've done with Dracula and Jekyll and Hyde and all that other shit.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, as far as, like, a really, really good werewolf fiction kind of thing. Yeah, nothing comes to mind, because a lot of horror that I read, or stuff that I read, or could read, rather, with werewolves is, like, you know, fucking Twilight or whatever. It's always part of, like...
Or, like, action stuff.
Yeah, it's always, like, part of a bigger universe, and, like, there's nothing that really stands on its own.
Yeah. It's that sort of thing. Like, and even, like, the werewolf... The concept of the werewolf curse is done brilliantly and interestingly in other places without explicitly being a werewolf, like The Incredible Hulk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I don't know, like, have you watched Teen Wolf at all?
I've watched some of it. It kind of bored me.
Yeah, it's
just
hit and miss.
Drama.
Yeah, it's teen drama, pretty much. It's hit and miss, but I don't know. I feel like it played around with the whole werewolf tropes and world in an interesting way and tried its best, but yeah, I'd tend to agree with you.
Yeah. It tried some stuff. It's better than the Underworld movies, that's for sure, in that at least it's trying to be more than the badass action stuff, but it's not...
The Underworld movies...
I feel like that show wishes it was tough.
Yeah, the Underworld movies for me, like, every time I see a new one coming out, I'm like, they're still making these? And I've never watched
This is
one.
the worst war ever.
No, I've literally never watched a single Underworld movie, but every time I see a trailer or something, I'm like, they're still doing this?
They're not good.
Yeah.
They're not. They're the most shallow, boring things ever, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, let's talk about design. Get a little bit out of Wolfman himself and talk about werewolf in general. What is your favorite werewolf design?
Favorite werewolf design. So I really like the way he looks in House of Dracula, and I really like the way he looks in the remake. But if I had to just pick like a look for a werewolf, so have you ever watched what's it called? Vampire Hunter D?
No.
Okay, so Vampire Hunter D, there are two anime movies, and it's a series of like light Japanese novels. But there's the first one, which is like one of those classic anime films up there with like Ghost in the Shell and Akira and all that. Not in that it's that good, but like it came out in the same period. And the second one's called Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, and in that one there's a werewolf that's just like a random character on the side, and it's the most interesting werewolf design I've ever seen, because it's a dude who turns really hairy and turns into a wolf, but like his stomach is the werewolf, and like his stomach is devouring things independently of the rest of his body. It's kind of badass. It's not like a conventional werewolf design at all, but it's always stuck in my mind as a really clever way to do a werewolf.
Okay. For me, I've said this before on the show, my favorite werewolf design is still Van Helsing. They look so fucking cool as werewolves in those movies. In that movie, I fucking love the werewolf design in Van Helsing. Another really good one, I think, is... another good one, I think, is... Oh, shit, I lost my train of thought. The 2010 Wolfman one looks pretty good, too, and... fuck, I can't remember now. Oh, well. We'll leave it there. Recommended, as far as the Wolfman himself goes. Recommended readings, watchings.
So, the original Wolfman movie. House of Dracula. I like House of Dracula. I know a lot of people hate it, but I like House of Dracula. What else? And... So that would be the Wolfman, but then, like, more specifically werewolf stuff. The episode where Oz becomes a werewolf in Buffy, which is, I think, season 2. Yeah, it's season 2. No, it's season 3. It's season 2 or season 3. But when the episode when Oz first becomes a werewolf is really, really good. Angel does some stuff later with werewolves. It's cool, but it's not quite as interesting. Just because Oz is so much more of a fun character. So that'd be mine.
Okay. Yeah, I'd say the 2010 movie is worth a watch. I'm really curious if I can find a fan edit of that online. The original Wolfman, I mean, for the sake of watching the Wolfman, I'd say it's worth a watch. As far as just general werewolf stuff worth watching, checking out, Ginger Snaps is a pretty good movie. What's another one with werewolves?
It's not a lot of stuff out there, is there?
Yeah, I mean, like, everyone loves An American Werewolf in London, but I'm just kind of, like, iffy on it. Teen Wolf, the not the series, but the movie Teen Wolf, I really like.
The Michael J. Fox one?
Yeah. It's like, I saw a young werewolf on the top of a truck acting like a fool. Is probably the best line in film canon ever. Like,
true.
Yeah, so...
Alvin and the Chipmunks meet the Wolfman.
Sure, why not? Yeah.
Did Abbott and Costello ever meet the Wolfman, or was that just Frankenstein?
I know they met the Mummy in Frankenstein. I don't know if they met the Wolfman.
Yeah, I didn't think they would. Oh, yeah, the Mummy's another one of those where, like, doesn't really have a lot of roots in books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Alright, I think that'll do it, though. Deadpoolzilla requested to do a couple of these with me, so Steve is saying goodbye to character analysis videos for the rest of the month.
Aw, bye.
I mean, you could join if you want. It's certainly an option, but it's just scheduling everybody.
Sure, makes sense.
Yep. Otherwise, so next week we'll be talking about Freddy Krueger, which should be fun. Anyway, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm the Exile.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.
Ha 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 ha!